Who is Lyndon LaRouche? Lyndon LaRouche is a revolutionary scientist who fundamentally advanced Alexander Hamilton's American system of political economy. In fact, LaRouche once said that Hamilton could properly accuse him of stealing his system, but would otherwise really want to talk to LaRouche about how he figured out the methods for measuring the connection between rates of technological progress and the rates of increase of the productive powers of labor. That fundamental discovery allows nations to target investment in the physical economy in ways that will ensure continuous economic progress and growth. And since this kind of continuous progress can only occur based on significant scientific breakthroughs, LaRouche is also a student of the history of science and of classical culture, believing that classical forms of music and poetry are essential to the functioning of the human creative mind. He is also a political warrior, having run for president 8 times and worked with governments throughout the world to bring a new renaissance into being, with a just economic system for all countries of the earth. We hope that you will take up LaRouche's mission, as he has advanced the work of other great geniuses in history. Born in 1922, LaRouche served in World War II. His earlier childhood choice to wrestle with the concepts of history's greatest thinkers, and his early years at work, thinking through the value of machinery and of automation, helped lay the basis for the economic and cultural discoveries he was later to make. His military service in the Indian subcontinent gave him, as a young man, first-hand experience of the disgusting cruelty of the British Empire, which inspired in him a lifelong devotion to figuring out how empire operates and how to defeat it. LaRouche described his experience of the British role in the August 16, 1946 massacre in Calcutta.
It's a central area, park area in Calcutta. And up the main street, what was then the most prosperous, the shopping street and so forth, Chowringhee. And Chowringhee ran up toward an intersection with Dharamtala Street, which cut across and ran you out to the direction of the Governor General's palace. So the crowd got off the trains and so forth, assembled, and were coming down Dharamtala in the direction of the junction of Chowringhee and Dharamtala. At that point, there were British police with heavy machine guns stationed at the street at this juncture. And as the protest mob came down the street, they opened full fire with machine gun fire into the mob.
The closing period of World War II saw the death of Franklin Roosevelt, whose intention to end colonialism worldwide at the conclusion of the conflict sadly did not come to pass. Witnessing the change in U.S. morals and economy following this political shift, LaRouche took upon himself personal responsibility for rethinking the principles of economic science and of reshaping U.S. economic and political decision-making. Over the period of 1948 to 1952, he made his unique discoveries concerning the parameters of progress in physical economics. He tested his method, accurately predicting the 1957 recession. In the late 1960s, amidst the political ferment among university students, he brought together the beginnings of a unique political movement. That movement aimed to understand and analyze the present and future political situation and developments in countries throughout the world on a better basis than most intelligence agencies. It championed and sought to develop fundamental scientific breakthroughs, primarily in the areas of fusion power and plasma physics. This movement unearthed significant discoveries in human history, including the truth concerning the founding of the United States and the fight to spread the principles of the American Revolution throughout the world. LaRouche's successful second major forecast was that of the end in August 1971 of the Bretton Woods monetary system put in place after World War II. The speculative economy, which replaced that system, represented a rebirth of the British Empire, with wealth and economic control concentrated in purely speculative financial activities, and physical production outsourced from the advanced to the developing sector, in a free trade regime which trapped developing countries in wage slavery while destroying the productivity of the advanced sector nations. The LaRouche movement has fought against this in battles throughout the world.
You can do the same thing with the global economy. You simply take this mass of unpayable paper, shove it to one side for future renegotiation, set up a new monetary system to create credit to keep basic production and agriculture and industry going. Now we can, at this point, we can have, that is, anyone in the White House who wants it, can have a new international monetary system which would establish approximately $300 billion a year of long-term credit principally for exports of industrial commodities from the advanced sector to the developing sector.
Proposing a new basis for relations among nations and of economic policy making, LaRouche developed his influence and renown, meeting with top leaders around the world. On the strategic front, LaRouche saw an opportunity presented by the horror of mutually assured destruction. The doctrine that was in place to prevent nuclear war between the US and the Soviet Union by threatening and annihilating all-out nuclear response to any use of nuclear weapons. LaRouche had the twin aims of replacing this dangerous policy with mutually assured survival through a joint work on defense against nuclear weapons, brought about through major scientific and technological advances that could be applied for the betterment of humanity more generally. In the late 1970s, LaRouche worked on developing proposals for beam weapon systems to shoot down nuclear missiles, and incorporated this into his 1980 run for the White House. This concept became what President Reagan announced in 1983 as his Strategic Defense Initiative, an offer to collaborate with the Soviet Union to end nuclear terror.
I call upon the scientific community in our country, those who gave us nuclear weapons, to turn their great talents now to the cause of mankind and world peace, to give us the means of rendering these nuclear weapons impotent and obsolete.
As an official back-channel negotiator with the Soviet Union, LaRouche warned his Soviet contacts that if the USSR rejected Reagan's offer, they would collapse in, as he put it, about 5 years. The Soviets did reject the offer from Reagan, and the calamitous problems of Soviet economy built up. As he saw its impending collapse developing over the years, LaRouche, in West Berlin in October 1988, forecast to everyone's disbelief the imminent reunification of divided Germany.
Under the proper conditions, many today will agree that the time has come for early steps toward the reunification of Germany, with the obvious prospect that Berlin might resume its role as the nation's capital.
Speaking with certainty of what was to occur, LaRouche laid out proposals for common development in Eastern Europe, crossing the Iron Curtain. And against all expert opinion, the Berlin Wall fell the following year. But LaRouche's success in shaping U.S. policy on the presidential level and the influence he was gaining around the world had made him powerful enemies. He was unable to witness German reunification in person because he was in prison as a result of a politically motivated prosecution involving Robert Mueller, a prosecution that makes the Russiagate attacks on Trump look almost mild. Former U.S. Attorney General Ramsey Clark wrote that the prosecution of LaRouche involves a broader range of deliberate and systematic misconduct and abuse of power over a longer period of time in an effort to destroy a political movement and leader than any other federal prosecution in my time or to my knowledge. Undeterred, in 1992, LaRouche made his 5th run to be U.S. president, this time running from prison. After securing his freedom in the 1990s, through the intervention of hundreds and hundreds of officials and legal experts around the world, in a process organized by his wife, Schiller Institute founder Helga Zepp-LaRouche, LaRouche worked internationally for a new world economic system based on the principles of physical economic growth that he had developed, a new Bretton Woods system, as he called it, with specific development projects and concepts in mind. These were presented by his wife at a 1996 conference in Beijing, and published by his magazine EIR in 1997 as a full report. The seeds were planted for the new paradigm of economic outlook, now increasingly represented by Chinese President Xi Jinping's Belt and Road Initiative. But the West did not take LaRouche's advice, and its own economic troubles mounted. With the election of the disastrous George Bush in 2000, LaRouche made a speech on January 3, 2001, before the inauguration of Bush, about whom he said, quote, "The incoming president promises to be the greatest catastrophe in American presidential history." With a global financial crisis brewing, LaRouche forecast what was coming up.
What you're going to get with a frustrated Bush administration, if it's determined to prevent itself from being opposed, its will, you're going to get crisis management, where members of the special warfare types, of the secret government, the secret police teams, and so forth, will set off provocations which will be used to bring about dictatorial powers into motion in the name of crisis management. You will have small wars set off in various parts of the world, which the Bush administration will respond to with crisis management methods of provocation. That's what you'll get.
Less than 2 months before a day that would shake the United States and the world, LaRouche warned,
"We are now in the depths of a systemic financial crisis that if war does not break out between now and the end of the year, or if there are not assassinations of key figures from among international leaders during this period, by the end of the year, purely and simply, the present financial system will have collapsed."
That war did break out with the attacks on 9/11. On a radio program pre-scheduled for the morning of September 11th, LaRouche responded to a question immediately after the planes hit in New York.
Lyndon, is there any reason to assume that this would be something other than Osama bin Laden?
Osama bin Laden is a controlled entity. Osama bin Laden is not an independent force. Remember how he came into existence?
So, who controlled Osama bin Laden? To this day, the United States has not fully prosecuted the perpetrators, funders, and enablers of this massacre. The FBI director at the time of 9/11, Robert Mueller, prevented any investigation of Saudi involvement. Later, as the intelligence agencies under Dick Cheney's influence lied about Iraq's non-existent weapons of mass destruction, and, positing some connection to September 11th, a senseless, murderous, and destructive military operation was launched against Iraq in 2003. Lyndon LaRouche strongly opposed the Iraq War and exposed those in and around the Bush administration most responsible for it. Wars are not good for the economy. As trillions of dollars were wasted in murder in other nations, the U.S. continued its decline. As housing prices were rising rapidly and anyone with a pulse was able to get a mortgage, LaRouche spoke in July 2007 to the effect that the world was facing a crisis far more profound than U.S. mortgages.
Too many things are unstable. First of all, this occurs at a time where the world monetary financial system is actually now currently in the process of disintegrating. There's nothing mysterious about this. I've talked about it for some time. It's been in progress. It's not abating. What's listed as stock values and market values in the financial markets internationally is bunk. These are purely fictitious beliefs. There's no truth to it. The fakery is enormous. There is no possibility of a non-collapse of the present financial system. None. It's finished now. The present financial system cannot continue to exist under any circumstances, under any presidency, under any leadership, or any leadership of nations. Only a fundamental and sudden change in the world monetary financial system will prevent a general, immediate, chain reaction type of collapse. At what speed, we don't know, but it will go on, and it will be unstoppable. And the longer it goes on before coming to an end, the worse things will get.
The financial system did indeed blow out, replaced with a new regime of bailout and of endless quantitative easing, a policy supported by then candidate and future President Barack Obama. Today, after two far worse than useless terms by Obama, in which the needed economic reforms were not made, the Western financial system is in worse shape than in the 2007-2008 collapse. It could disintegrate any day. A decision point whose existence LaRouche forecast decades ago is now upon us. We must choose. LaRouche and his associates have, for decades, developed the ideas needed to create a new renaissance for economic development, of scientific progress, and of cultural advance. Now is the time to win the fight to make it happen. Please make a financial contribution to the LaRouche PAC. 100% of our funding comes from contributions by individuals like you. We urge you to donate generously.